Hey, this is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com. It's Tuesday, December the 11th. Today was a little better. We had some actual movement today. We weren't stuck in a 4-point range the entire day. And, really, today looks a little similar, actually. We opened up right in here in the 1423 range. We traded as high as a 1434 or so, and then came back down and tested the lows of the day again. And so really we spent the majority of the day, or we spent the entire day really in a 10-point range. But the difference between today and yesterday is that, we went from one side of that 10-point range to the other. So we actually had some trends. And we'll talk about each of those trends and kind of go from there. We opened up with this trend line right here, and generally 90% of the time you're going to find your trend line off the first two swings, which are here and here, and that gave you the trend line. And even though we broke the trend line here, there's no bearish bars or real closes outside, so you could look at that as a close outside, and then there's one leg and then another leg up. But I believe this was the first real break of the trend line where you got closes outside it that amounted to anything, and then you had two legs up to a new high, and then we sold off. We spent, let's just see how long we spent. We spent from 10:20 to after 2 o'clock, so most of the afternoon, actually most of the day we spent trending down. This move up happened pretty quickly, and then we spent the day trending down, and then this move up happened pretty quickly. So, but this was your trend line. We had the break, we had the correction, and then we come back to, we're headed back. We had this little channel on the way down, I believe, but there also was a channel, somewhat of a channel, similar to yesterday, the spike and then the channel we went into. And you always want to draw your trend lines off your swing. So I'm going to call this like a little minor channel here, because we did get a bounce right here off that channel like you would expect. But there were other ways to find this even without that line. This was your low from earlier. We had two measured legs down to a new, that tested that low, and then we bounced. So a couple of different reasons you'd want to enter there, but you always want to be drawing your lines to see if you see something different as well. But I do believe this was the main trend line going up today. And then we had the break, a couple of legs up to a new high, and then we sold off until we got an overshoot of this channel, and then reversed and headed back up again. And so let's back out, talk about the trades. And one thing that you always got to keep in mind is when you see days like this where there's lots of little choppy bars, but they just keep going higher and higher and higher, that's generally a strong trend. And so this trend was fairly strong until the reversal started, and I would say the reversal started really right here, but I would say you had a good idea of it here, because this is the first time we made a lower low for the day, and then we made a lower high, and so then we were off to the downside. And we'll talk about these trades when we get there. But that's kind of what I was seeing. But anyway, when you see these little small bars, lots of dojis, and they're choppy, and they don't hardly get back to the EMA very often, but when they do, they rock it off again. That's a strong trend. And until you get a break of the trend line, you got to stay with that trend. And even then, a lot of times you'll get two nice legs up to a new high before you finally start to sell off. And so just remember that, because I think that throws a lot of people, because this doesn't look that strong really until after the fact when you back out and you see it just keeps going higher and higher. And I was looking for two legs up here too. You got one leg up right here, and then your correction, and then your second leg up right here. Actually, you want to come off of that right there, because there's your correction up to your new high. Let me make sure I measured that right. Yeah. Low to high, and then there's your correction. You come off that low. So I was looking for this to be my target right here. And you see we overshot that a little bit, and what happened was when it broke through these highs right here, all these people that were piling in short here hit their stops and, you know, their exit stops or their safety stops, and they ran it on up. So it ran up a little higher. I was looking for 1432.50, and we actually got to 34 and a quarter. So depending on how you measured that, and you might have even measured it like that right there, and then off this one, and that gets you pretty close. But really, it's generally to where you get your major correction in there, and so we had a pretty good correction here. So I was looking for the next leg off of that right there, and that gets you to right there. And like I said, this, you know, you got a lot of people that started piling on short here, and they got burned when it broke higher. They all had to exit, and so he hit all those stops up through there. And that's what that's why you see these sudden bursts like that. And same thing here. They were starting to pile up the shorts, and then all of a sudden it reverses, and they hit a lot of stops. And then they pile on again, and then what happens? It takes off again. So let's talk about each of the trades. The first trade, we opened right in this area, right in here, and you're finding a lot of support here. This was kind of a questionable. There's a lot of overlap here, but notice all these traps right down here, and then finally your 830 open comes, which was, let me see which bar that was. It was this bar right here, and you almost could have entered above that bar, even though it's bearish, because you got a new low right here. You got a first entry long, and or actually you got the new low, so your first entry short, then a second entry short, and it failed, and that turned into, so you got a first entry, second entry, third. So that's kind of a fourth entry long there. So the long doesn't really hardly get you there, but what you got to notice is you got this low that's lower than those lows, and then you got a first entry short and a second entry short, and so you've really got kind of a trap there. You've got several tests of these lines. You finally touch the EMA and the trend line right here, and that's the real key, is that it's, you know, you're trying to go down twice, and you finally get to test that line, and generally that's what it, you know, causes the explosion. Everybody's waiting on the touch of that trend line, and you had to know that's there off those first two swings. And so I actually went long right above the red bar, and of course it hesitated, but that happens a lot of times because we're coming out of this. So that's a breakout pullback short, or breakout pullback long right there. Notice that we broke out, and we pulled back, and we test it, and then we take off again. And again, it's right off that trend line. So if you didn't enter here, you could have entered again right in here because it's a breakout pullback long. But then you don't, you know, then you got resistance another tick or two higher, and you see it hesitated a little bit. So if you didn't get in here, you didn't get out of this before it's pulling back again. But notice here that, again, you get all this overlap, and it breaks out the top first, and it fails, and it comes down, then it breaks out the bottom, and then it takes off again. And so this is really a two-legged pullback to the EMA, and it's a breakout pullback long, breaking out of this stuff. A lot of different reasons to be thinking long. And again, you got to be, after a move like this, you got to be thinking, hey, we're probably working on a second leg, and our target's way up here. And so off it goes again, because this is the first break of this trend line right here, if you can even consider that a break. It's not even really much of a break. Let's see, we might even can adjust this. Barely touching it. So yeah, that's probably more like it. So really, you never really get a close outside of it. This, you might consider that a close, but with a doji, it's just hard to, I don't really consider that a close, and I think that most traders didn't until here, because then you got your two legs up to the new high, and then that's when you sold off. So you could have entered here on either one of these. And again, this, even though you got a higher high, this is still two legs back to the EMA and a reversal. You got a nice bar here to go long above, and it takes off. And I drew another one here. This was a really risky, actually this one should have been green. This was a really risky trade. because notice how far we are away from the EMA, but you got a little trap right there, and really, depending on how you had this drawn, it really should have, that's how I originally had the trend line, and I think that's a bounce off of a little tiny one tick break, and then it heads higher, and so it would have worked. Again, it's a little risky, but when you see a trend like this where it just keeps going higher and higher and you don't really get any corrections, every little correction almost is a chance to get in. And you just need the right bar, and that was right there. And, it's another easy scalp. You didn't get much more out of it. And then what happens? They pull back and test the breakout of that little area. And this was a second entry long here. You got first entry, then another leg down, and the second entry long. Right there, another move up. But now you got the break of the trend line, and there's no shorts in here really yet. I think you're still looking for longs, and you see they trapped everybody right here with this one little tick lower. It didn't take off, but then finally it did right here, and that's a second entry long. First entry long off this new low, pull back, second entry long, and off it went to racing for a new high. And you might have got shook out of this one if you did. It wouldn't have, when this turned down right here, I wanted to exit, but I hung on, and it went on up higher, and it worked out. And you actually had another slight trend line right there. So if you were drawing that trend line, you knew there were some bounces off these, each of those are bounces off that line too. So more reasons to be thinking long that we're still going high yet. So then you got the correction. Even though we had a new high, there's not a real good setup here, and you can see we went into this, and then you might have gone short right here. I didn't like it because it's coming out of all this chop and stuff, and we're still in an uptrend. We haven't really proven that it's not going to even push up and test this high yet again. But when you had this failed second entry long and it turned down and broke lower right here, one more tick below that means we're probably going to get another leg down, and you had to be thinking a leg like that right there. There's leg one, and so I was looking for another leg down like that. And you can see we actually went a little further than that. We went down and tested these lows, and but a nice second entry, a nice failed second entry long that turns into a trap. And if you didn't enter where I entered right there, when this pulled back and tested it and then turned back down, you could have entered there too. And then of course now you got this possible line here, but notice you got this low right here, and we bounced off of that. So a couple different reasons. We got two legs down to a new low. You got to be thinking we're probably going to run back up here and test these highs, and that's what happened, where we failed and we turned down again. And so a little long here. You could have waited on this pullback because you do have a little overlap here. By the time this bar closes, it pulls back, tests, and turns back up for a second entry long right there. So you could have gone long here or here, really. And then we got two legs up. I wanted to short this, but you wouldn't have had this trend line yet. You wouldn't have probably even had anything to the downside. And you got to be thinking, hey, maybe we're still in this trading range, so we're going up. So I really didn't see a short there. So, but after you get that high, you draw your, you draw your trend line. And originally you probably would have had it drawn right here, like so, like this. But once you got these other closes right here, then you got to be thinking, hey, maybe it comes through those closes right there, and you can see that. But you got one leg down, a little two-legged correction, and I was looking to go short below that bar, and there is some congestion, but it broke higher and trapped everybody, but it didn't break lower, and then it created this little bar here. But you don't want to be going long. I'm not thinking long yet because you haven't got back to this line, and it's all this overlap. So when it ticked higher and then trapped everybody and then turned down, I went short right below that bar, but you could have definitely gone short right below that one. And this is one of those where if you tried to drop your limit order back in the bar, you got left behind. And look at that move. Nice move. And that was really it for the day for me at that point. But when you came down and tested these lows again, the open, especially after that big a move, and let me show you, there's two, I believe this was a perfect, there's leg one, and you got your little correction there, and there's leg two, and it's really a perfect measured move, and you're way away from the EMA. You got this strong support from early this morning. You got to figure you're going to get a bounce back to the EMA, and you can see if you caught that, you could have ridden it all the way to the close. And that was the good thing about this trade was you caught, your runner survived right here, and it was an easy ride all the way down, and you should have started thinking about maybe exiting right in here. And you could have got fooled right here. But I usually give it 2 ticks, and I gave it 2 ticks on that one, so I was able to ride it down, and I didn't exit till it broke 2 ticks above that bar. And I was really hoping we might ride this thing, might keep on going down, but you got 2 measured legs at that point, and you can see that. Actually, if you measure it from that leg, which is probably right to that leg, it's a perfect measured move, and you can see that. And I didn't mark anything after that. It's too late in the day by the time you get another entry in here, and there was a long right here if it hadn't been so late in the day, but this is the last 15 minutes of trading. You don't want to be entering a trade there. So some good movement today, some good setups. Most of them were pretty standard 2-legged pullbacks to the EMA, and then a couple of chances to get a couple more in the afternoon, and again, some good movement today. So hopefully you made some money today. If you had a difficulty yesterday, I got some replies afterward that some of you had good days yesterday. So not everybody got fooled yesterday, and that's good. Hopefully not everybody got fooled today, and most of you had a better day. And we were getting into closer to the holidays. At some point, I'm going to probably take the rest of the year off. And the next few days I may come and go some odd hours, so I may not be here right at 8:30, and I may leave at lunch or something like that. But I'll be doing, I'm still going to try to, do the chart lesson each afternoon until I actually take vacation time. Again, my hours may not be regular hours because it's quiet around here and most of the traders are gone. So I may be the only one around, and I may be kind of coming and going and having some different hours and different trading, and maybe not trading the whole day or the whole morning or whatever. So, but I will do the chart lesson, and I'll give you a heads up when I'm gone so you know to quit looking for it and what day to probably expect me back, that kind of thing. So, but anyway, hope everybody's having a good week. Hope you're getting prepared for the holiday season, and I will talk to you again when we do the chart lesson tomorrow. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com.